Hi there, I wanted to do this video today to share with you some information that I've found out. Some of you might be aware of it already, but I think it's really, really interesting and relates to mind control and how these elites actually keep us in a constant state of mind control. And also this stuff actually affects all of us on a daily basis to varying degrees. Anyone who's had an abusive childhood will probably relate to this massively. Certainly I did, and I've become aware of this condition recently, and I really think that everyone needs to know about it. So anyway, it's called complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I mean, that's really just a label. What we're talking about is the effects of trauma, how that affects the human body on a cellular level, and how that affects the human spirit, because as we know, this is completely connected. I think I've been in denial about this my whole life. I mean, let's face it, when you wake up to what's going on, it really is just peeling away the layers of the onion, and every day, brings sort of new insights and new information on this journey. But what's become really obvious to me lately is that through repeated trauma, you keep people locked in a state of cognitive dissonance. If you can do that, if you can keep people in that constant state, coming, pretty much from the reptilian brain, from that fight or flight, constant need to survive, constant need to work, constant need to get the money in, the constant list in one's head about what we've got to do each day. If you can divert us and traumatize us, then you've got a perfect recipe for full-on mind control. Because it occurs to me, what people say whenever this stuff is discussed, and I mean it's all over Facebook, and those within the truth movement are always discussing it. We are under mind control. Why is it that we acquiesce? Why is it that we collude with these elites? Why is it that we do as we're told when there's so few of them and so many of us? Well, it seems to me that this is the answer. If you can traumatize people on a daily basis, and if you can divert their attention on a daily basis, then you've got a perfect setup, really. And that's what I think is going on. And that affects, also the behaviour of order followers. So the police and the military, the reason that they're so sort of happy to accept these orders is because these people are particularly susceptible through years and years of trauma, just taking on board the fact that most of the people who, particularly where the military is concerned, most young people that go into the military are coming from very poor backgrounds. They don't have much hope of any kind of, financial security. A lot of them are going to come from traumatic backgrounds as well. They're perfect. They're absolutely primed to go in and so-called fight for our country, whilst actually, causing harm and killing other people in other parts of the world. So this traumatizing can actually start in the womb, because if you think about it, a growing baby in the womb is completely connected to the mother. We're talking about, on every level. So the physical level, where the baby is fed through the umbilical cord; on a spiritual level, where the baby is picking up all the energies that are surrounding the mother; on a mental level, on an emotional level. These things are all absolutely 100% connected, and this is something that I've discovered through personal experience, and I'm absolutely sure of. There's no question in my mind. So going back to this complex post-traumatic stress disorder, what we're talking about is a long-term trauma. So from the womb, repeated traumas. Now, even if you were lucky enough to grow up in a so-called functional family, and a happy family, you're still going to be traumatized repeatedly by what's going on in the world around you. I believe that human beings are naturally good, sensitive creatures. But what happens is we're put into a situation that goes completely against the grain. We're asked to live in a society which, upholds values that go against the grain for most of us. Most of us are not happy with the status quo. When we're aware of what the status quo is, because there's this idea put around, that most people are just happy, and they're just happy watching X Factor, and they're just happy with the daily grind. I don't think that they're happy. These people are under mass hypnosis and under mass mind control. So repeated traumas, which puts people into a state of cognitive dissonance, that can be through the mass media, through the mainstream media, constantly showing pictures of violent acts, constantly warmongering, constantly talking about war, constantly talking about stabbings, the repeated false flag incidents that go on all over the world all the time, constantly reporting on negativity. Have you noticed? It's not only because positivity doesn't sell newspapers and positivity doesn't get people watching the news. It's not only that. This is a form of mind control. If you stop telling people about all the positive, wonderful things that human beings do for each other, then you can keep people in a constant state of fear, in a constant state of trauma, and in a constant state of cognitive dissonance. You then add on top of that a work ethic, which is absolutely ridiculous, where you give at least 70% of your life over to somebody else. They've bought you, they control what you do for around 8 hours a day. And then when you get home, actually all you can do is go and shop at a corporation, because that's about all you can't even get to any decent independent shops because they close before you get home. So you go to a corporation, you buy poisonous food, you poison yourself. Let's face it, you're in such a state of addiction, constant addiction. I mean, I'll probably do a separate video on the fact that I think everybody is suffering from some kind of addiction or other. But it's a well-known fact that loads and loads of people are addicted to unhealthy food, to salt, sugar, coffee, various additives that are put in the food. These are also keeping us locked in a low frequency range, also keeping us sick on every single level: physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. So you put that in, you go to the corporation and you buy your poisonous food, and then you switch on your poisonous television in the corner, which I believe is not only in terms of poisonous in terms of the programming and the subliminals that are coming through that programming and the advertising, but also the frequency that is actually just put out by the machine itself. It makes sense to me. That might sound paranoid and crazy to some people, but I'm pretty damn sure that that's the case. I don't have television in the house, and I won't allow television in the house. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's absolutely poisonous. We shouldn't be watching it. We shouldn't be having anything to do with it. So you're constantly traumatizing people also by the fact that you're asking them to go against what is their innate good nature as a spiritual being having a human experience. So you're asking them every day to shit on someone else to get where they need to be, to come from ego, to think me. There's some really interesting videos that have been done and talks by a guy called Mark Passio, who actually goes into the idea that what we emotions and thoughts and what we think isn't even necessarily what we think, because even when we're so-called awakened, we can still end up coming from a place of mind control. It would be very naive to think that we could be alive for that many years in this system and actually not be deep affected on a really, really deep level. So we need to even be questioning, do I really think that? How do I even know what I think? Do I really want to be coming from ego? Do I really need to protect myself like this? Do I really need to treat somebody else that way? Or can I come from a place of unconditional love? This is something that's become so clear to me recently. So it's a good idea to check out some of his videos and look into some of the stuff that he talks about, because it's really, really interesting. So, you've got the trauma through the mass media, you've got the trauma through being asked to go against your loving nature on a daily basis, you've got the meat industry, which I've talked about before. I mean, the idea that it's become normal to rip apart another being, think about it. I mean, I guess, not everyone's going to be at a stage of a kind of understanding where they quite see it on that level. But to me, what's happening is we're being asked to suppress feelings of compassion and empathy. And even if we think that we're compassionate, empathetic human beings, I reckon that our capacity to grow in that area is actually endless. That we can become pure love, as David Icke talks about. He's another guy that's definitely worth looking at, although I'm sure most of you have already looked into his work. But yeah, we are really pure love. So we are pure energy, pure love energy. And we have been trapped in this low frequency range, operating from a consistent place of trauma, leading to post-traumatic stress disorder, cognitive dissonance, and then the mind control tactics by diverting us so that we can't be of use in this world to our fellow man, to the environment, to animals, that we're just, we're bought and sold. We're basically bought and sold since birth. So yeah, it's a really, really interesting area. Right, so what can we do about it? What can we do about this post-traumatic stress disorder? Well, if like me, you've experienced a lot of trauma also in your personal life and in your childhood, there's some really interesting breakthrough therapies out there. One of them is called EMDR. So it's worth Googling that, looking into that. That's a short to medium term based therapy for complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which has had like really, really fantastic results. And it's not just quackery, it's being used pretty much across the board to treat this. Because it used to be that there was this idea that only returning soldiers suffered from PTSD, which is utterly ridiculous, because if you think about it, there are so many millions of types of traumas that could be incurred. There's very likely past life traumas that we're born into this incarnation with. That's something we may or may not be able to work with through people that work in that area and through shamanic practice. And it's not something that I know about, but it is something that I definitely want to study and look into in the future. So yeah, really, really interesting. EMDR being one way of treating this. So if you haven't suffered that kind of trauma in your personal life, I think like being really, really aware of what you look at, what you read, what you watch, what you take in. So not getting into that thing that I think a lot of people in the truth movement get into on social media in particular, is getting a dopamine hit from investigating really quite traumatic, nasty stuff. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be aware of the atrocities that are going on, because we do need to be aware. If we're not aware, in what way can we take any action? In what way can we, look to change things? So we do need to have information, but it's when it becomes like kind of addictive, where we feel like we have to keep going down that rabbit hole, keep churning up kind of like really dark stuff. I don't think it's what we need to be doing. I think we're re-traumatizing ourselves. I think that we're adding to the cognitive dissonance. I think that's when, instead of like being helpful and, sort of bringing about change, we could be looking at actually perpetuating this problem. There's been some really interesting studies done on water that a lot of you are probably already aware of, where you can actually change things at a cellular level by the words you use, by the thoughts you have, by music that's played in the vicinity, for instance. It's really, really important not to sorry about that, be buying into that kind of negativity, because it's definitely not what we want to be doing. Basically, if you haven't suffered a childhood trauma and you want to look at it, maybe think about what thoughts are you putting out. What thoughts are you putting out about yourself and other people? Are you allowing yourself to get too caught up in negativity and drama and other people's stuff and your own stuff? What kind of language do you use? What kind of areas? What are your interests? Do those interests serve you? Do they serve yourself and those around you? So there's no doubt about it that what we take in is what we put out. And going back to the water thing before the phone interrupted, it's so important to understand that we are made up of 70% water, and these water studies prove that things change on a cellular level in terms of the megahertz that music operates from the words that are used, from the thoughts that we have. So just being aware of all of that, and basically just being aware of the fact that we're all suffering from trauma, and that we're all being traumatized on a daily basis. So just being really, really careful, really, really mindful of that. And I think it's a massive area actually for research, and I think that it's something that I want to be looking into more and more in the future. So, let's try not to buy into this system of, churning up negativity. I did a video the other day on what I think about the meat industry and the fact that, the ripping apart of other beings and the killing of other beings is very much linked into this as well. Most people aren't even conscious of it. They literally just go to the supermarket and they buy a dead thing, a chopped up dead thing, in a packet. There is no kind of where's that empathy? It's terrifying. You're talking about psychopathy coming from the top, undoubtedly. And, we all talk about it in the truth movement. We're always going on about, the psychopaths in power. These psychopaths in power, they're not, that this has a trickle down effect. We're all, suffering from some level of psychopathy because we're going against our nature and we're doing harm and we're doing wrong, and it's impossible that we don't incur the consequences of that. You have to look at the idea of a collective consciousness. Collective consciousness, here's an example of collective consciousness. Everybody believes that it rains on a bank holiday. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but 9 times out of 10 it rains on a bank holiday. That collective consciousness brings about our reality. So not only are we bringing about our personal reality, and there's some excellent information on YouTube and out there about law of attraction, which is not in any way my area of expertise, and there's so many people that would be far better informed for you to look at law of attraction. So not only are we bringing about our own circumstances and experiences, but as a collective we're doing it. So if we're colluding with wrongdoing because of this post-traumatic stress disorder and the the diversion tactics of mind control, then we're not actually fully kind of compass mentis and conscious of how we're actually creating our collective reality. Again, Mark Patio is great to look at in terms of understanding cause and effect, natural law, universal law, and how we bring about our own reality through this idea of collective consciousness. Anyway, this is just a sort of introduction into some new videos that I'm going to be doing on this mind-body connection and improving our health on all levels, because there's absolutely no doubt that if psychologically we're not in good shape, we're not going to be physically in good shape, and that doesn't matter how good your diet is. It doesn't matter how many high quality supplements you take. So this is just kind of an introduction to that. I hope it's been interesting, and I'll be following up with some more information soon. Thanks very much.